Hello and welcome. I'm Omar Sallam and this is the Product Life. Today we're going to be discussing one of the most commonly used terminologies in the world of product management, which is product-led growth. We're gonna be talking about what does it mean, how it could be applied into an organization, and actually what kind of impact it could bring to an organization. Our guest today is Mirela Mus. She is the founder and CPO of Product People, one of the most active product organizations in Europe and other markets. Welcome, Mirela, and thank you so much for being.
Hi, Omar. Great to be here. I'm Mirela, founder and CPO of Product People. We're the premier destination for product management services in Europe. What this means in practice is that if companies like Zalando, the World Health Organization, DeepL, Blinkist, or others have someone going on parental leave, leaving the company, or a short-term initiative that can be as low as 3 months or as long as 24 months, we step in with one of our PMs and cover that with different allocations. So it can be a part-time or a full-time time investment. My background is originally in computer science with an MBA. I've been doing product management for about 12 years now, and half of them have been in a leadership role. On the personal note, I enjoy hiking and reading sci-fi amongst a few other hobbies, and I'm based in Berlin since 2015.
Amazing. That's a really interesting background, and thank you for sharing that with us. And also, I know the Product People is doing a lot of amazing work. You're involved in many, many interesting organizations, and it's really interesting to see how product management could be done from this perspective, where you're tackling different business use cases in different industries and organizations all at once, not just working on the same industry in the same company. So definitely it's a really interesting perspective. And going to our topic today about product-led growth, we've met before, and I know that you are one of the best people that actually pitched this topic and is able to talk about it. So just as a start, I wanted to ask you, what is your definition for product-led growth?
In a simplified way, is leveraging the product itself to sell and upsell and renew the customer, which means if you think of how this started in a traditional sales only organization, and in some of them there's still these constraints. Now you'd have to have sales do a demo, and that would be the first time someone experiences the product, and then have a lot of touch points until there's a conversion, and only then someone can use that said product. It's, of course, I'm referring more to B2B than to B2C, because B2C has had an easier time applying PLG tactics. And if you look at companies that are hyper successful now, like Airbnb, they've been doing this since 2010 or so, or even Amazon, right? You look at some of the things like one customer bringing in another customer through a referral program. Airbnb that had that since the beginning of time. So we're not talking about something super new. I think it became more interesting for B2B due to the consumerization of software. So people were used in their private life to adopt software easier, install it, and have it just work. There's also the bring your own device to work trend, right? It's like not always when your company covers your mobile phone, but you still install Slack or Microsoft Teams on your phone with your business account running on it. So that's what I mean on bring your own device. And then this became relevant in the media again when the zero interest rate policy stopped. So we had what was called a free money time during COVID, and that then stopped. We also have the first war start, and now we're in the second war happening in Europe or very close to Europe. And all of that puts a lot of financial pressure everywhere. And the result of that was the free money party being over in Q2 of 2022. So interest rates went up, It means it was more expensive to borrow capital. You don't have it at zero interest or even negative interest to keep money in the banks. Well, which means all of a sudden VC firms, private equity, corporate ventures are all being very careful on where they spend this money.
Yeah.
This was very tough for the startups that were in the hypergrowth phase. We
Hmm.
also see very large implosions like WeWork, who didn't have a solid business model, it just went on grow, spend to grow, but not fix the fundamentals because we hope to fix those fundamentals later down the line. And then that time didn't come for many companies just because this investment time frame ended, and now we're in tougher
Yeah.
part of our journey, which is going to
Of
last
course.
for a while. Companies are more careful with spending. They're doing cost reviews everywhere. And this, among other areas, hurt a lot of software as a service providers, especially in the B2B space, right? Because if your
Hmm.
clients are other companies who are relying on either consumers or investors or other parties for money, and these parties are all squeezed themselves by the market or by their investors or by their clients,
Yeah.
then it all ends up being a bit of this domino effect of cost cutting. Plus, sales teams are quite expensive, and they scale also a lot harder than software scales, which is an
Of
obvious
course.
thing to say, but is that I don't say by that sales teams are not useful. In some cases, they're crucial. There are a lot of areas where you can't get ahead without having sales that helps the thing happen, let's just say
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
And they're also the best person for product teams to learn from. So I would like to first assess this, that a lot of the B2B PMs are like, oh, sales is horrible, they overpromised and all of that. No, I think that they're actually the first part in the company where you learn the most about your
Of course.
clients,
Yeah,
because
they're
there's the
closest to the
ones,
clients. Yeah.
yeah, and also they're the ones whose job depends on them understanding what these clients want, and maybe
Yeah.
the reason they overpromise or do that is that they figured out what the client wants and that's not yet in the product, but they still
Hmm.
want to make their bonus. So just having more empathy for that, and also how hard this job is, and I know because I try to do it myself, and that gave me a lot more empathy, as well as for recruiting. So I think the best way to gain empathy for a role is to try to do it, and then you realize is how much you've been underestimating the difficulty of it. Let
Yeah.
me know if you'd like to add a bit more to this parenthesis. So I wanted
No.
to bring a bit of context and how I see it as a
Yeah,
start.
I wanted to go a little bit more specific and maybe deeper
Mm-hmm.
into the actual definition itself. So you mentioned that making the product at the center of, the activities or how the organization is planning and moving and so on. But like,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean exactly? And if we try to break down the definition itself,
All right. Yeah.
is it
So it's a
is it just, yeah, is it just obsessing on the product itself and how it evolves and so on, or would it also include like applying product management frameworks or mindsets into managing different functions away from product management, like making sure that the sales strategy is designed and led and discovered and all of that, with some per
100%.
product management principles on going into discovery and doing user research and so on, like expanding this mindset also outside of the product team.
Yes, totally agree with that, because it does require a different integration of how sales and marketing work together with product management and product development.
Mhm.
Because if you have the product doing the selling by ways of its features, you probably don't arrive at that from day one. You can also do that only post product market fit. So talking to the customers and being very close to sales and marketing is something product team and product manager in general we need to do every day. In hopefully a successful case, then the sales team can move more towards accounts that pay more and better, and basically understand how to move up towards mid-size to enterprise, while the startups and lower cost clients can just be managed by the product itself. and then figuring out what do you need for this next level, and how could you utilize the time of the salespeople better. Because at some point and at some company size, you're going to need to deal with data compliance, what does the IT purchasing process looks like, and so on. And that's a more effective way of the sales team to spend their time, considering these accounts could be 10x the value of a mid-size account, compared to calling up someone who got lost in the conversion funnel and having to explain a confusing copy on a button. So that, I hope it's more tangible example. The other
Yeah, yeah.
part would be that through this self-service, let's say maybe it's a product where you still need some sales touch point, still having a free trial or a freemium would help you get into this organization and let people experience and familiarize themselves with the product via a self-service model. And then you could have a threshold in which sales should approach this account because you see a certain adoption rate. But by the way, tracking, it's paramount. So it's like understanding what you're tracking and how, and also what is your customer or client, how you define them, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to understand what's the activity at an organization level that is relevant for you. So if you think of
Hmm.
Slack, you need to have people talking to each other, right? Just the number of people signing up on Slack or the number of people doing some things or just being online maybe is not relevant. So the understanding exactly what makes your product work. And I think they did that. If I'm coming back to their example, they have this 10,000 messages limit, which means that they saw that after that threshold, people have invested enough in their product that they may want to
Mm.
stick or they may want to pay to see their message history. The other part, which is interesting, is expansion and renewal driver, right? If you think in a more classical model, sales will still need to ping someone. It's like, hey, your contract is expiring, and maybe you can directly do that via recurring billing or via a few things in the app or
Yeah.
web app. And that is also, and if that fails to the product, then sales and marketing could be a fallback and understand why are we losing renewals. Is
Hmm.
it a pricing? So like you said, sales can also be used very much for discovery, as well as understanding where you should go next, or smoothing out areas that the product cannot do itself, because
Yeah.
sometimes you just need to navigate the org chart.
I think if we try to like summarize that into a more holistic definition or a more holistic understanding, it would be um, talking about how to use product mindset and the product frameworks and ways of working into guiding the strategies of different functions in a specific company. Like one example that really jumps to me, and it's in the classic definitions of product management, is um, as you said, the salespeople working on the ground are the closest to the customers, so they speak to customers every day and they know what customers want. But one of the main arguments of the existence of product management is that customers, yes, they know what they want, but they don't always know what they actually need. They might want something that would resolve a side effect to a root cause of a problem, or there is a bigger problem that they are not really fully aware of, and that's where product management goes. So yes, product could be working with sales or any customer facing team to understand more about the customer, to understand more about insights and so on, but it goes into a different way of working or a different mindset to uh, to to be more useful for a strategic direction for a company, maybe.
Yeah, that's true, because but that is also then a harder challenge, because you need to understand if there's a certain set of behaviors or things that the customers are doing and are not very effective.
Yeah.
And do you want to your so it's a very interesting product philosophy. Let's say
Yes.
you're having a a planning tool. If you think of Jira, a lot of people complain about Jira, but it's very configurable. And I think they ended up with that because they saw, well, every company wants to
Yeah.
do their own sprint planning and their own ticket configuration in a million different varieties. You have this templated way where you can just set up, okay, this is Kanban template, go and do it, and so on. But that's that's probably this hard line between how much are you letting the customer configure it, or do you go the base camp route where, hey, we discovered by working inside our own company that doing this approach where we're very rigid about certain things and are not discussing or customizing or changing them, and this is how our software also works, so you can live with that or you can go and work in Jira. So that's also a very interesting approach to B2B, because indeed on one hand you could also end up with something like SAP and Salesforce, where then a lot of the cost goes into paying people to help you customize this and then deal with the mess you have after customizing it.
Yeah. Sorry, I stopped for 2 seconds here. When you were typing, the sound of the buttons was very high.
Ooh,
So
okay.
I'm sure I
I was
can
making
deal
a
with
note.
that in the editing, but like if you can
All right.
minimize the typing as much as you can, it would be great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome.
That's very good.
Okay. Okay, great. So let's jump into trying to apply product led growth. And let's first ask a primitive question. Who is it for? Like, is every company and every company that has a tech product is actually ready for a product led growth or could easily transform into that? Or there is a specific set of criteria or prerequisites that would qualify some companies that, yes, PLG is for you or PLG is not for you?
Yeah, that's a great question, Omar. And I think this is also what every PM who listens to a podcast out there should ask themselves. Does this sound nice, but does it really work? And if you go at it from first principles, does it make sense in our specific context? So there are some things where it's clearly not the right time. For example, if you are pre-product market fit, because you shouldn't scale something that you haven't figured out how it works yet. You should first tighten the value proposition and make sure you have a very good one before you start doubling down on acquisition and expansions and so on.
Yeah.
Then there are also the parts where this has limitation. um, I would think if you don't have, let's say, organic engagement loops, or an organic engagement loop would be you create a board in Notion, you invite your team to do a retro in Notion or to help you with a user journey flow you're thinking of doing, and they see that or they see it and comment and so on. And then they like Notion and they're going to create their own board when they have a retro and when they have their flow or when they want to just do some mind mapping. Similar to Notion, right? You have the people who read, the people who comment, the people who share, and then these people also start tracking and collaborating on these documents. But you don't have that if your product is a cybersecurity tool that tries to prevent phishing attacks by simulating phishing emails that land in people's inboxes. Even if they do a sort of competition, who clicked on the list or which was the funniest click and so on, it will still have this pull to it because it's trying to teach you to not have a behavior that you may be inclined to have. A worst example would be probably HR compliance. No one is excited to go to these GDPR trainings, but they are in some of the HR tools, as companies need to have the proof that they've done this certain type of trainings for certain type of employees at a certain frequency. So then the department you're selling to there is more the HR department that knows they need to have this, and you're helping them save a little bit of time with tracking and making sure there's a way to get people to go through these trainings. but the users themselves won't be that excited to do it because it's not part of their regular workflow. So that's, I think, a part of analyzing who's the buyer, who's the user, what context will they be using this in, and so on. There's of course always a certain amount of PLG you can apply everywhere, but it may not be at the core of the product, right? Which would be
Yeah.
users bringing in other users. And then there's the enterprise and government clients where the sales cycles are very long, makes this type of monetization tricky. Sometimes there needs to be tender involved. They could have preferred vendors or a vendor whitelisting process, and so on and so forth. So that's just another type of client, but you can still go into that motion, right? You could have
Mm.
a certain part of the product that's off the shelf, and then there's the enterprise version. And if you look, even Miro has an enterprise version
Yeah.
where you have like two buttons where you have the pricing and just go and convert off the shelf, and there's
Mm.
the last one that says talk to sales. And many companies have also been going into that because just the volume is so big. Even if
Mm-hmm.
this enterprise of governmental clients ask for a lot of customization and end up kind of treating you like an agency, it may
Mm-hmm.
still be worth it even for product-led companies to make this compromise, especially in times where cash is quite tight everywhere.
Yeah, of course.
So I
Um,
shouldn't be saying
yeah.
this on a product-led podcast, but sometimes you you need to be pragmatic, and I think a lot of our discipline in product management is just maturing to that. That it can't always be like in the book someone wrote 15 years ago, where it's like this idealized version of what product should be. Many times you just need to be thinking, what would the CEO or founder of this company think or do,
Yeah.
and why are they doing that, and how can I be more helpful to the company instead of looking good when giving a
Yeah,
talk online
exactly.
about like how
Mm.
awesomely I've applied my new framework.
No, no, no. Yeah, exactly. Actually, I think that's pretty fair because, like, in the true essence of product management, if you are you are always trying to work to benefit three parties, or mainly two parties: the customer or your user and the business. So it's not just being obsessed with applying the fancy frameworks and what the book said, and what's defined in the textbook. Like, actually, when you're trying to see what would be the best for the business, you would decide at some points that, okay, let's push forward our sales or our market to be leading in this, and let's have a sales optimized model or something like that. Like, and that's the one of the essences of product management, is that it's not just being obsessed about something fancy, but you would actually promote different things, even to push forward other departments or teams, because that's how you're going to drive business impact. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And I like how you brought this from the beginning, because many people think that product kind of stops at their interaction with the tech team, and I would see this more as a holistic journey,
Of
right?
course.
Product is also how you have the customer experience and the end-to-end part. I know that sometimes it feels frustrating for the PMs, and they think, oh no, but I don't interact with customer support and so on. But that's still, the customer doesn't see a difference. They will still think they had a bad experience with your product if this customer support chatbot gives them
Of
like a shitty
course.
answer, or if the person picking up the phone hangs up on them, or so on and so forth.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
thinking holistically and more like how would the founder or the CEO or even the CPO think about this would also help someone not only be successful as a PM, but potentially even promote further, because um, in these times that's what's going to get recognized.
Actually, that's very interesting. I was just discussing a similar point in the last episode, where I did the review with our guest there about the book Build that was written by Tony Fadell.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking, of course, about how to build your product and so on. And we were talking about how do you design a customer experience or a user experience. And we discussed the controversy of what does the job of a product designer mean. Not and and collaborating, of course, with both product managers. And there is always this misconception of that the product designer is the one that designs the page, the front end, and the buttons and the colors and all of that. And we were discussing that that's a wrong interpretation, because a true product designer, it's not just a graphic designer. What we just said is a definition of a graphic designer, but they
Exactly.
actually design the whole end-to-end experience, including, as specifically you mentioned, how users should be interacting with customer support, how the user is being acquired at the very beginning, even from like offline activities that should be acquiring the user and guiding them into the funnel, and what happens, and what are the different experiences that they deal with, what lands them into different paths of the user journey. And then it goes into a specific feature, and that translates into actually features, not just designing a front end for some page or something like that. That's not the job of a product designer. That's a tiny, teeny tiny part of that job.
Yeah, I think product design has also the same maturity cycle as product management, right? On the far spectrum, you have people that are like, well, I've put the buttons on the page, I'm a product designer. And then you have the high quality people that do user research, look at, okay, in which context are my users going to do this? Is it a low data environment? Will they be using some old Android phone somewhere where data is throttled, right? And if you think about it, Facebook even has a version that's built for these environments where people have
Yeah.
very little data to stream on their phones, just because they want to cover this demographic that's economically disadvantaged, or in areas where there's not so much coverage. And I would say, like you, this is the best product designer has a lot of overlap with the PM, because they can think from the business perspective, even touching a little bit of what's going to be feasible in implementation. But if you have a design system in place, a lot of these discussions have already been cleared, and
Yeah.
you also have a lot of guidelines, just like, we are going to use this. And then you can actually focus, okay, what's going to be the setting in which this person is going to interact with this area of the product, what's the job they're trying to solve when they're there, and so on and so forth. I remember one of
Yeah.
my best experience has been when I was working at Tier on something people find boring, like compliance. So part of the compliance was stopping people from parking in unauthorized areas, and even more, if possible, getting them to park in an area that had fewer scooters, because it costs money to pay other people to move the scooters.
Okay.
So aside from not letting them park exactly where they wanted, because there are some cities which are very strict around where can you leave your scooter, it was more, I was like, but could you maybe move it a bit over there, because there we don't have enough
Hmm.
coverage. And one of the reasons that makes people book or not is the availability. So
Of
having a
course.
very good and even distribution of vehicles is paramount to get the next rider in there. And
Makes
I
sense.
remember working with a very good product designer that thought about all these edge cases, then went in and found users in that city that we were planning to launch it, that had the strictest constraints around that. And interviewing them, we also found users that were using a competitive product and had
Hmm.
a few user interviews to that. And all of that was organized by the product designer and the user research team. And it felt so good as a PM that I could not need to focus on that. Then my focus was then with a lot of other topics, because
Yeah, yeah,
compliance
yeah.
is very large and I had lots of other dependencies on many other teams.
Hmm.
But it was still pretty cool to push something forward in the product itself, instead of like doing behind the scenes part, and not having to worry about a lot of product questions, because those were taken care of by the product designer.
Yeah, that's a great example. So the second part of the question that I asked is, okay, it sounds great. It sounds very promising. You could, get a lot of impact out of it. Why isn't everyone doing it?
So aside from the examples where it's not a good fit, either from the stage or the industry or the size of the customer, it's also pretty hard. It's
Yeah,
easier to sell and get instant feedback when you do it the old way, and this is also how you grow into the product. If you think of a lot of software as a service companies, at some point in their life they were a glorified agency, right? they,
yeah,
they had a few clients, they were building something, and they managed to get this escape velocity where what they built was scalable enough to apply to more others, and so on and so forth. But at least in Europe, with what we're seeing, many still heavily rely on the salespeople and the relationships these people build to get into their clients.
Hmm.
And the other part is having a product strategy that people agree on, measuring the same thing everywhere, and having this alignment. I would say also to some degree with tech and product and sales, but also having a strong product function. So in many companies, the product function is not that strong commercially, or from this point of view, they're more like, okay, we are just organizing in our little corner over there, and
yeah,
we're doing stuff by the book, but they're not talking about things that the founders care, and their founders care about that either from a company perspective or because their investors care. um, how are we increasing our profitability or our revenue? How are we preventing churn? How are we fixing some things that are not that sexy, because like no one wants to say, oh yeah, we fix bugs. But yeah, if customers care about that, and if it's something preventing them from staying with you or increasing usability, then that's important. So I think it's a lot of this structural, and I believe also a lot of the thought leadership out there in product management actually makes it worse. There was
yeah,
this meme I saw the other day where there was like this meme of someone drowning and they have their hands up,
yeah,
and it's like B2B PM drowning under demands from sales, like not knowing what to do next, and then
yeah,
thought leader just say no, and then like says like a person drowning. so
yeah,
so it's pretty hard, and it's not going to change a lot, right? Because now there's even more pressure on increasing this profitability and growth. And if leadership sees that product is not up for it,
Mhm.
then product is either get removed or even downgraded in responsibility and power inside of these organizations. And still, it's such a new function that you see it in the tenure of CPOs. It's way under the tenure of CTOs. I think CTOs
Yeah,
tend to tenure around 3-4 years, and CPOs around 2 or 1.5. So that you see that already, it seems to be like the first head to roll or throwing the towel, and still has so much longer to go. But it's a high leverage function. So if we somehow figure out how to do this right and how to have the right people for it, it's super powerful for the organization because it's cost saving, it's enabling us to do more, and it's also helping the other functions be more effective, right? Because why should sales be spending time apologizing for your bugs, when they could try figuring out a new revenue stream or an upsell, or just maintaining the customer relationship or monitoring the market, or
yeah,
they could do a lot more interesting things with their time.
yeah, exactly. And the basic point. I don't think that product is a high leverage function, or like something like that, because at the end of the day, what are you trying to sell with your sales team? It's the a tech product, right? And it needs someone to build it, and someone that decide what needs to happen and so on. I don't think there is a lot of friction between collaboration, in collaboration between product and tech, and most companies and industries. It's just about debating some ways of working, and so on and so forth. But
Mhm.
product and tech, they go fine together. It's the other way around, the narrative of product and tech versus other functions. And most commonly it's either sales or marketing in most cases. But like, I don't think that specifically business leaders are thinking enough about, okay, at the end of the day, we're selling a tech product or a tech solution
Mm-hmm.
that needs to be built, that needs to evolve, that needs all of that. And like, while I could increase my sales force and have people running everywhere and trying to upsell and coming up with new revenue streams, we need actually someone to build a product that matches these and serve and cater to these new revenue streams, right? And like, I also think one of the main problems here for adopting product-led growth is the sense of competition in decision making ownership. um One of the
Yeah,
things,
I agree. Ego is hard, right?
yeah, ego,
Everyone wants to
specifically
be
fragile
useful.
egos, and like, people tend to
Mm.
think that they are fighting for their jobs and to secure their jobs and everything. But again, the point is being missed. And I personally believe that being truly product led, again, is about mindset of working, is about a way of working, and it's about how to think about the problems and how to solve them. Sales or marketing are tasked with things that product and tech people cannot do, and product and tech and people are tasked with things that sales and marketing cannot do. Sales and marketing cannot develop the actual product. They would have a lot of input and a lot of guidance and a lot of insights on what is needed in the market, but actually building the actual product itself and strategizing about it, that's a different job. So that's why we have these different teams. And the problem here is the obsession with the ownership of decision making. Like,
Do
everyone
you think
needs.
it's
Yeah,
incentive related? Because that's also something I've been looking at in my company. Like how do you make everyone do what's best for the company? Because I know at some point people started, oh, but my headcount is shrinking because these two people left. Can I get like the new hires in my area and so on? Or like not wanting to staff. And anyway, there were some discussions where some people cared about the headcount. And I said, why do you care about the headcount? You should care about your profit participation.
exactly,
And that's
exactly,
the share that you get from the profit participation is higher
exactly,
due to us making a higher profit. So we ended
exactly.
up this year we're distributing a percentage of the profit to everyone in the company with a 12 plus months tenure, because it's last year's profit, right? So it needs to be people who were here at least a large part of the last year. So that we also stop a bit these discussions. Oh, but I'm doing more on the community side or this other side, and it could have a good second order effect of bringing in a new hire, but I'm not getting the bonus for this new hire because I didn't give them my greenhouse link. Or
Yeah,
same example, but for a client or for other cases. And I was like, yeah, but if you do something that's overall good for the company, that we know will reflect in the profit of the company, so you're going to get something out of it through this
yeah,
fuzzy distribution. But I think that could also be the same in these companies, looking at what shared metrics, or like even like what shared bonus targets leaders. So if you look at C-level, what could they put in between product, marketing, tech, and sales, that all the people leading these response departments could then be less incentivized to fight with each other and more incentivized to, hey, remember that North Star metric? Let's um, let's optimize towards it, or let's optimize towards what we discussed is important. But I know it's hard. It's also something I've been thinking about a lot, because you can give equity, but people forget about equity. Is not that liquid in Europe, right? It's not as often as in the US that you'll
yeah.
have a certain type of exit. So how do you get people to be
Look,
excited about the
there's
company instead of,
definitely,
oh, I'm
yeah.
the greatest?
Well, definitely that there would be many various ways of doing that and incentivizing people, and different schemes on having these incentives structured. And it depends on the size of the company, the nature of the business. There's a lot of things. Like I wouldn't claim that I would be the expert here, but when there is some an incentive system in place, and a good structure and policies and all of that, again, as you said, like maybe you give them shares, but still they start not caring about this anymore, and it all comes back to I need to be the owner of the decision. I need to be, the highest person that is taking the decision, and so on. And that's the fundamental problem over here. And what I think that PLG is really about also is sharing ownership for decisions, sharing the ownership for a strategy, for a specific function or specific domain, for example. I personally believe that you need to have shared ownership of the strategies and the objectives that you're optimizing for, as you said earlier, in order to get everyone invested in working together somehow. So imagine for some function, what is normally happening right now is that product have their own strategy, they have their own
Mhm.
objectives, and they build a deck and present it to people. And then sales do the same, and marketing do the same, and tech do the same. So for the same function, for the same product, you end up having four different strategies. And yes, they try to
There's
spend.
some ways to mitigate it. I mean, we've seen
Yeah,
it
yeah, of
mitigated through
course, of
OKRs,
course.
and where depending which side of product, let's say, works closer to marketing, so part of like product growth would then have shared the same OKR and the same KR shared with the marketing team. And of course,
Yeah,
it takes a while to agree on what that is, but that has happened successfully at a few clients we worked with.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, definitely. That's exactly what I was about to say. But and I would also add to this that it's not just about one OKR or two OKRs, because like between four different functions working on the same domain, if you only have one OKR that is common between them, you end up with like 8 or 10 other objectives that are distributed between them, and a part of them, a part of their
you're not
efforts.
allowed to have more objectives. So we
Yeah, I
worked with a great
understand.
CPO at a company,
Yeah,
and they started off like that. Like we had three objectives, and we could have like five KRs for each objective, and so on. And then the
yeah,
next quarter, they said, no, 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 only one objective, max three KRs. Please get along with marketing and
yeah,
come only with
exactly,
that,
exactly.
because
So
else everything goes. You just also make
that
it
would
vague
be, yeah,
enough.
that would be a
Uh,
great solution. Like agreeing, making sure that everyone is following the same direction, and that would force them to work with each other, rather than working in separate directions. Yeah,
yeah, so
yeah,
that I've seen work effectively. And then there's of course the other part. How do you marry how do you still like let the development team fix tech debt and so on, because that's not
yeah,
going to be captured in one of these parts. But that they were solving with just having a swim lane dedicated for tech debt, and there was another capacity for ad hoc requests, because we are
yeah,
still working with marketing. There's a
definitely.
volcano eruption in Iceland that seems to happen once in a while, and you need to take out all the ads related to flights to that, and maybe you just like need some manual intervention in certain tooling. Maybe they can do it, but maybe you still need someone from the development team to do a quick and dirty hack. So for that, we instead of going to these lengthy plans of like something that can happen once, we just accepted that some things we just
Of course.
do when needed, see if this need occurs, and then we treat it seriously. And if it doesn't occur, then we just do it and don't have unnecessary discussion, because like one of the parts of working with non-technical teams is that they take one example and they think now we need to build this whole big thing about it, whereas if you just give them a bit of bandwidth and air for that small things, then you also understand like how they're thinking and working, and see that maybe it wasn't um there's like not much more needed over there.
Yeah,
Plus, you also build a bit of report and credibility, and they see that you're actually trying to help them. You're not trying to blow
exactly.
them off. So that was very well at a specific client, but they were relatively forceful top down on what you can agree on and what you shouldn't agree on. And that wasn't our part was of the product was working with marketing because it was part of the acquisition tribe. But in other product areas like retention and so on, they had the same way with their core stakeholders.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds perfect, and I think that that would be the best basis benchmark that you could start doing resource planning and resource allocation based on. Uh, having these different queues of things that we're gonna work on for the objectives, and add a percentage of the resource time and the resources you have for ad hoc requests and for support for working on tech data, and having these would help you in resource planning definitely.
Yeah, and also maybe just make the team aware, because sometimes also development teams tend to read too many agile blog posts and are like, oh, we can't interrupt the sprint because it's, well, but if something is burning, and we know that once in a while,
Yeah,
depending on which type of department you're in, there will be some things that pop up, and
yeah,
just being aware of that and saying, okay, but we know that X% of our time is just reserved for this. If it doesn't happen, then we just pick up something from the prioritized backlog. But if it happens, it's not going to be a lot of drama and emotion, no
it's
outbursts
really
about it.
funny.
It's just,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's really funny that that some teams and companies are too obsessed with the agile manifesto that they end up not being agile at all. Like, they're not flexible
Yeah,
at all.
that's an amazing observation, Omar. Yeah, it kind of ends up defeating the purpose. I mean, I know it's coming from a good place.
Yeah,
Europe has this large background in manufacturing where things can be planned and organized better, whereas in software there's a lot of creativity and unpredictability
yeah,
and that's pretty hard to get right to begin with, especially if you don't understand tech or haven't done it before, and
exactly.
try to because it's a bit more like how investment works, like undersizing your bets and understanding the probability of the bets working out, and seeing like when to pull out or when to double down, rather than like how are you going to build the perfect car or the perfect bridge and so on.
Yeah. Okay, I would like to jump
Mhm.
to one of the very interesting things that I saw you speak about in different conferences related to PLG, which is tactics by altitude, and
Mhm.
like you put also an interesting title to that. So how can I supercharge my organization with PLG? So can
Mhm.
you tell us more about these tactics by altitude, and what do you mean by that?
Absolutely, and that's a great segue, because what we talked about just now was what you do at sea level, right? So what you think is you're on a plane, you are at 30,000 feet, you're just like looking at and seeing little squares below and houses,
Mhm.
and that would be part of it. Like how do you bring enough responsibility but also enough constraints, so that people have a clear goal what to do. I'm still in favor of making product responsible for profit and loss, and then working with other departments. I'm also not against your option of being very collaborative with marketing and sales, as long as they still have this constraint. Okay, we focus on one goal or one metric, and maybe with like another sanity metric, or guardrail metric. But aside from that, like not having everyone pushing in another direction, having like one single source of truth, and then some liberty at the ranks below on how they're going to achieve that, while figuring out a way to monitor and steer them. But I think from sea level, that needs to be very clear. And I did see it as also a bit of organizational depth from the times of free money, that a lot of companies were like, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and this new product line and this new initiative and so on. And now is not the time for that. Now is more, okay, what is our core focus and which things are we fine to fully exit or accept that we're not going to do, or we're going to do slower, or we're going to do later, because we're just forced to focus currently. So that would be at C level. And then if you think of product leader, my definition of a product leader is someone who manages product managers. So that would be like half the altitude. I was using an eagle emoji for this because I saw that eagles can go up to 15,000 feet.
Okay.
It's understanding what management above wants, right? Because if you don't, then you're not going to be able to connect this strategy that they have with the execution. And in many organizations, I have seen a pretty weak middle layer. Like sometimes when you hear the CEO talk, it's like, oh my god, like who coached you? Because I want to talk like that. Or it's like so good.
Yeah.
And then you'd see like a CPO, and this is a true story. I can't mention the organization and one, but the CPO talks about product led and the PMs driving commercial value and switching from these just order takers to, pushing it and just being the ones who drive the organization forward. And then our people say, yeah, they brought in another business analyst, and I don't understand what this business analyst does. It's like something requirements, but we already like have the requirements. So like we now need to understand what we're doing with this product analyst here because
No.
we were the PMs. So it's like, but their CPO seems like someone on top of it, and it's like, yeah, but this other people, like the head of product and so, like, has no idea what they're doing, and they're just overwhelmed. And some dev agency sold them a business analyst. So that's kind of this disconnect, right? So usually if you're a product leader, you're also probably thinking, well, like, how do I promote to CPO or COO or CEO? Because those are the career tracks aside from becoming a founder yourself. So think of like, how are you digesting this product strategy, the key KPI or North Star metric that the company needs to focus on, and going to your PMs and saying, okay, we want to drive this metric, and with this, this is you should focus more on these initiatives or that initiative, and kind of shut down things or challenge that don't seem to be aligned with it. At the same time, making them keep an eye, or just like giving this by example, by monitoring the profit and loss, seeing how any changes or any experiments tie into this, and keeping them on topic, because I think PMs also get bombarded with a lot, product leaders get bombarded with a lot more, and it's just useful to have someone there and go in and say, either raise the bar on what people are doing, or just reminding them, no, we said we were going to do this. This doesn't seem to fit with what we said we will be doing. Is there a good reason to change what we said we'll be doing, and then I need to go back up with that? Or are we just putting it for later or not doing? And at the same time, it's important to look on how you're retaining and promoting people, because this is the behaviors you're going to steer in the organization. And I know already a few product organizations that are just promoting people based on impact, kind of the Amazon, Zalando style, where you need to show which initiative you drove and how much commercial
Yeah.
leadership you've displayed in the organization that is proven with metrics, aside from, let's say, product management skills in general and other behaviors. But that still is sometimes hard to quantify for people doing platform PMs or things behind the scene that can't just like put a conversion or a euro number on what they've been doing. But
Yeah.
definitely that would be how you promote to go away from promoting on tenure, or, oh, you've been around here, fine, you have 3 years on your CV, you get the title senior, but more on, okay, what have you done for the organization that we can attribute to your efforts, and how does this fit into the competencies we're looking for the next level to build up your promotion case? That would be the tips for product leadership.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And just commenting on one of the last things that you said, that would be a little bit harder for platform product managers and platform teams, because actually most of my experience is on platform
Hmm.
products.
And do you agree or
So
disagree?
no, I actually agree, really, because yes, it's really hard to tie your objectives or how you are trying to manage your platform product to business business impact, direct business impact as conversions, for example. But there has to be some proxy over there, and um, the advice to platform product managers is try to be really obsessed with being customer centric. Try to
Hmm.
understand how does your platform contribute to the business to enable the business to deliver value to the customer somehow, because that's why these platform exists. It's supposed to make it easier for the business to build value, right? And that would be the proxy you would be using in understanding how you're giving impact to your customers, which translates to business impact. And um, it might be like a two or three even levels or layers of proxies before you're able to do that, but that's the only way you could translate that. Other than that, you'll be stuck with trying to prove that maintaining SLAs and SLOs is a business achievement, which is not. So
Well,
yeah.
it's still it's more of a stay in business bucket, right? If you look at
Yeah,
investment buckets, it's like double down, stay in business, innovate, and so on. Like not going out of business is still a good thing, because if your service goes down, people can't book
yeah, definitely, of
hotels and
course.
apartments, so revenue goes to zero. So it's still like one of these hygiene factors. The other part, there's a lot of proof that whenever site or app latency goes up, there's a direct impact on conversions and time spent in apps and so on, right? So you could
Yeah.
still use that. And then the other part would be also a cost factor, right? Because if you optimize a
Hmm.
bit of your AWS storage and save 10-20K per month, that still contributes to the P&L.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
that was also when I did a maternity cover at Zalando. We were A/B testing between two ML models, and we said we are going to switch one with the other, even
Hmm.
if it's just like the same impact on the user, but the other one is going to cost us less because it doesn't have a Siamese net as a backup.
Uh-huh.
And it actually also had almost a 5% improvement in a click-through rate, and that was definitely a winner. But we would have added it just for the cost saving that it brought, because it was over 10K, just like for one simple change in a few areas. So that you
Hmm.
can definitely show with the platform, right?
Yeah.
It's if you
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
look at how you're optimizing costs. But indeed, for new initiatives, it's a bit harder for you to
Definitely.
track. Could
Yeah.
be also in go to market, because if it's very easy to launch a new market or a new language and so on, with your platform being more
Yeah.
customizable and scalable, that kind of could also add. But yeah, this is
Well,
great advice
yeah.
for the people working on backend, that admin, or in integrations or platform, because you're a bit further away, and but you still
Yeah.
need to apply the same thinking.
Well, applying product management on platform products could be a topic for a separate episode. That would be very, very rich. That there is a lot to discuss over there.
Happy to do it.
Yeah.
All right, but with that, we also moved to the what can you do at
Yeah.
the IC level? It's
Of
6,000 feet,
course.
and
Yeah, yeah,
we've
yeah,
already
yeah.
discussed a bit
Exactly.
what you
Exactly.
can do as a platform PM.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. I just wanted to hint that because it's close to my heart because I'm a platform PM. So
yeah, and I think
yeah, it got me interested.
it's an amazing job, and it's a harder
Yeah.
job. Many times we also get more often this type of roles because
Hmm.
it's harder for companies to hire for them, as someone needs to be. So in many cases they just say, okay, the person needs to be technical, we don't want to think about this anymore, it's too much.
Yeah.
But they're like, no, we want like someone who has an understanding of the business,
Yeah.
but also a little bit technical, so that the developers don't like completely dismiss the person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we, if possible, they should have experience in this and that, and then it takes very long to find them, and we end up doing a few of this. Or let's say the client wants to build a new white label platform, or things like that. So we've ended up with a few of these because it's not like
Mm.
something people necessarily gravitate to, and it's also
Yeah.
harder for companies to hire because they have a lot of expectations from this role.
Mm.
Oh, that's super cool what you're doing. So I think as a PM doing hands-on, probably one of the things you can do is don't get disenchanted if your company is doing some things you feel that are not product led, or you're getting top down things. Try to do in your area of responsibility
Exactly.
what's right, but also understand their language, and kind of start translating to your stakeholders, right? How are you contributing to the P&L? How are you contributing to
Exactly.
the metric, while not like hurting guardrail KPIs? Are you doing continuous discovery? Are you like very often in touch with
Exactly.
what your direct customers are doing? Do you also have a few operational things that you do well and often, right? So line managers appreciate if someone is timely and candid with feedback, if they react relatively fast to things,
Mhm.
if they adapt when they get this feedback, if they give them a lot of things that they can use when updating their managers or their stakeholders and so on. So I cannot stress enough this part of just openly communicating a lot on the Slack channels, like not surprising your manager and telling them, hey, this may come your way because I had this conversation with the stakeholders and they seem surprised about this thing. I will still continue to do this and that. Also, if you're a larger company, communicating horizontally with the other PMs and understanding what their roadmap is and how that may impact you, and so on, and if it's overlapping with the job your product area is solving. So I think there's like so much to say about just the PM role,
Yeah.
but mostly this would cover it just as a start, and you can of course personally
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
in.
No, definitely. That's a great statement. I think to close with that. Even if the product, even if the organization is not fully product led yet, that's no reason for being discouraged, and actually taking initiative and being proactive into showing what value product could think, even in the most junior positions, where even when someone is starting, they could start showing other stakeholders and other business counterparts what could happen in different other ways that are being proposed. Also, being highly collaborative with all of your stakeholders, that would earn like make you earn trust and gain trust
Mhm.
with all different business stakeholders. So like when you're suggesting to different practices or moving more towards product led, that would give you more leverage and more grounds to for them to be more receptive to these suggestions. And
Yeah, so what
yeah,
you said,
so
Omar,
if
also
it's yeah,
show, not tell. So I
exactly,
think a lot of people end up like in this preaching game.
yeah,
And we also sometimes end up in organizations that have been a bit burned with product discovery, because sometimes PMs end up in this like continuous journey or always discovering and kind
yeah,
of like not dying by analysis paralysis.
yeah,
So
exactly,
I would say stay a bit away from the preaching. Try to use as simple language as possible, because also the accounting team doesn't come in and bore you with their details.
yeah,
But be helpful and try to show like how are you impacting the metrics they care about. So
yeah,
less of the PM buzzword preaching, more of the showing and doing. And
exactly,
that will definitely win you, because you don't know if you end up with some people that have already been burned with some keywords that you're
of
using.
course,
So better
yeah.
not go into that and into philosophical debates.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I think that's a great state for closing this episode. We've discussed what is product like growth, what's the definition, and you gave us a very interesting story about the background and the history of how it started and evolved with how the global market was moving. We also talked about what it takes to actually have an organization that is ready for product like growth, transitioning into it. And you told us about your great storyline of different tactics by altitude, imitating an eagle, and yeah, it was a very very rich discussion. And I personally thank you for being here. I hope that you come back again soon to discuss more topics. And yeah, thank you so much for your time and for the
Thank you
knowledge
so
that
much,
you shared
Omar.
with us. Yeah, and for our viewers, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please share your feedback in the comments, and also share your opinions about what topics would you like us to discuss next. If you have suggestions for guests that you would like to see, that would be more welcome as well. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify and LinkedIn, Instagram, to know the latest and the updates for upcoming episodes. And thank you so much for tuning in.